Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are in the world, we would like to extend a very warm welcome to the latest in our series of IOSH COVID-19 webinars. And today's subject is on OSH competencies that you need for recovery from a pandemic. My name is Jonathan Nobbs and I'm Head of Corporate Engagement at IOSH, and I will be your guide, your chair through today's session. But I'm joined and pleased to welcome a superb panel of speakers that are going to provide context and answer your questions as we move through this session. Firstly, we have Jamie Sutherland-Pownall, Group Health and Safety Lead at Slater and Gordon in the UK. Secondly, we have Liam Tiddy, Head of Practice at Shirley Parsons, and Sue Parker-Tantush, Head of Health and Safety at the Co-op Group. Each will talk for around 10 minutes. Before then, we have a really good opportunity to answer any questions that you may have of the panel. But let's first set some context. Let's frame the debate that we're going to have today. So firstly, there's been an unprecedented challenge through COVID. Our profession has never been in more demand, and our skills are demanded more than ever to keep our colleagues, our suppliers, our customers, and our communities as safe as they possibly can. But how do we continue to provide that leadership, and what competencies do we need to display? Secondly, as we stabilise and we take control of this situation, what does this tell us about the competencies that we will need moving forward post-COVID that are going to be demanded by employers? So what I would ask you to do is to listen well, construct your thoughts and your questions, and you will have plenty of times for the opportunity to discuss them later on. So we begin by starting with Jamie Sutherland-Pownall. Jamie is a first career OSH practitioner, as well as a qualified biomedical scientist. He holds an MSc in safety and health, and he's had a number of leadership roles in a variety of sectors, including the nuclear, healthcare, construction and corporate sectors. Jamie is also part of the first Future Leader Steering Group, and he is due and in fact has joined IOSH Council for a second time in October. It therefore gives me great pleasure to ask Jamie to talk through the strategic context and the business need of competence for OSH professionals. Over to you, Jamie, and can I ask you to share your screen?
Thanks, Jonathan. I'll just put the slides up now. So yeah, I think, as Jonathan says, it's a bit of an unprecedented time for us all in the OSH world and the normal world. I think not much has changed for us with regards to our roles. We're still the go-to for all things health, safety, well-being, which obviously a public health emergency and crisis tends to fall under. In terms of the strategic context and how businesses are operating and how OSH professionals are operating, management and leadership through COVID-19 should now for many have become almost business as usual. We know what we need to do. Obviously in the UK, businesses need to be COVID secure. And we know the sort of hoops that we need to jump through to get us to that stage. As an OSH professional, and obviously needing businesses around us to actually, have our own employment in place, if there isn't that business there, we don't have a job. And likewise, if there isn't OSH in place, the business can't operate safely, and its people can't be kept safe and healthy. I think it's fair to say, and I think Sue will probably touch on it as well, that many organisations are now calling on their OSH functions, their OSH professionals, more than they ever have, rightly or wrongly. And certainly I'm seeing that sort of future planning and planning beyond COVID is an increasing agenda item. Just move the slide on there. So in terms of what is wanted by businesses and expected of their OSH teams, organisations obviously want to remain open, they want to remain functional, they want to, as I say, get back to business as usual as best as possible. No business, no money, no people. So, OSH, as it has for many years now, is an integral part of business. It doesn't have to necessarily be front and center, it can be in the background, but I think we all agree now that, businesses need our function working well in the background to keep, as I say, people safe, the business healthy itself, and the operations running smoothly. They businesses obviously want in current times to run smoothly and keep those people safe, not just now but also in the future. So pandemic risk should, in my opinion, be included in future strategy planning, not just at a health and safety level, but also at sort of a risk management and business continuity level. Certainly, other industries will have pandemic planning as part of that process. But I think obviously there'll be a large swathe of organisations that haven't necessarily considered that. And certainly going forward, I think OSH professionals are probably going to be the go-tos again in terms of providing that level of insight and advice when it comes to pandemic risk. In terms of an expectation on us as well, obviously business leaders at whatever level expect up-to-date information on guidance, on the current guidance, and how we implement that within our businesses. As I say, it's all right having UK government guidance or WHO guidance. How does that affect our day-to-day running, and how will it affect us going forward? So in terms of putting that all in place, what skills will help or have helped in certainly the past few months and going forward maybe into the next 6, 12, 18 months, if not a few years, given how long COVID will be around. So I touch on here about the two types of, I think, skill sets and competencies that we're all pretty familiar with. We've got technical and then we have professional and behavioural. Purposefully, you'll see technical is quite small there. And I think that's because, dare I say, we don't necessarily need an awful lot of new technical skills in dealing with the pandemic currently or going forward. A lot of what we have to do is verbatim. It's there in black and white. Yes, there are certain elements that are new for us all, but we're picking it up as we go along and we are constantly learning. But from a technical perspective, I think we're there or thereabouts. I have made a brief note there that, potentially further education for OSH professionals around infectious diseases or the biological sciences might be beneficial. But as I say, I think as a profession, we're doing rather well on the technical side of things during the pandemic. On the flip side, professional and behavioural skill sets and competencies, again, they form a rather large part of our day-to-day work, whether that be during COVID-19, but just in normal times, if we can call them that. So from my perspective, I've listed there a few personal and professional skills that will be key to helping our organisations both now and also going forward. And I think what people will tend to see is that they're no different really from present day, and they're not any different from maybe 6, 12 months ago. The skill sets required, the competencies required from a professional and behavioural perspective are pretty much the same and will be the same. It's just how we apply them to our particular businesses and potentially the challenges that are facing us ahead should things change. So, as I say there, planning, stakeholder management, communication, personal performance and personal resilience are some of the sort of competencies that I've picked out that certainly I've had to call upon probably a little bit more than in previous times. And I'm sure many will also have had to call upon them as well a little bit more than they have previously. Now, there's a lot of words on this slide and on this table, so don't get too bogged down, but I've broken down those 4 sort of competency areas and skill sets, and I'm just trying to tease out a few sort of key points there, really. So in terms of planning, as I say, we're in the midst of the pandemic. It's always good as any professional to look ahead, whilst not wanting to say, find the benefits from this pandemic. There are certainly opportunities for onward and future improvements to our businesses and our OSH functions. So, do we build, as I said before, pandemics into our business continuity plans and our OSH strategies? I think we should, and I think we certainly should have for those that do it already, should have a greater consideration going forward. I don't think anyone could have predicted the knock-on impact to society that this pandemic has had. And can we change the way we work permanently? And I think a lot of organisations, many of you on the call, your own organisations, I'm sure will be questioning, can we change the way we work permanently? So do we move to a much more agile working approach and methodology? Do we do the 3-day week, the 4-day week? There's this whole host of options out there. You know, do we just rent office space? Do we go into the office full time? You know, there's many options there that I think OSH professionals have to be alert to and open to, because with change, obviously, comes a change of advice and strategy that we would have to give and be involved within. In terms of stakeholder management and communication, again, we've got through possibly the worst phases of COVID. Yes, we're going into this second phase, but you know, I think a lot of people are in agreement, certainly in the UK, that hopefully we won't see the lockdown and restrictions that we saw back in sort of March time. But again, we must remain open to the challenges that COVID presents us with. And in terms of going forward and reflecting on how we've communicated or how we've managed our stakeholders, you know, are our internal reporting structures set up to allow us as safety professionals to feed into the exec or the C-suite? You know, do we have that line in? Certainly for me, I've had a direct line constantly throughout the pandemic, which has been great in terms of being able to speak to senior leaders and execs who at the end of the day make the tough calls. So being able to have that direct line in is great. Not everyone will have had that, but that's certainly something that, you know, we could look to improve on going forward. And equally, are we talking to the right people? You know, it's all well and good as putting in new procedures around COVID or post-COVID around pandemic planning, but are we talking and involving the right people at all levels throughout the organisation, not just the C-suite, but, you know, the guys and girls on the shop floor, as it were, who will, in theory, you know, a lot of the time take the brunt of the control measures that we might be putting in place. In terms of personal performance, you know, we would tend to reflect on serious incidents and find out root causes, you know, what went wrong, could we have done anything better? And I think now is the time, or certainly in the next few months, is the time for OSH professionals ourselves to look at our own performance. You know, could we have responded better? Could we have advised in a different way or a more novel way? You know, we've all made some mistakes in our careers, pre-COVID, during COVID, and we'll make them after COVID. But I think given the nature and gravity of what's happened, I think it'd be nice for us all at some point in the next, I don't know, 6-12 months to, you know, sit down and reflect on what we did and how we did it. Because at the minute, a lot of us are firefighting. We're just cracking on and making sure our businesses are running as smooth as they possibly can be. So I've said there, you know, building in wellbeing hours and protected CPD and reading time purely around COVID and our COVID response as OSH professionals. And then the final one that I'm going to just talk about before wrapping up is personal resilience. So we've all had it tough. No one has really been exempt, shall we say, from COVID-19. We've all been affected in some way, whether it be work or in society or at home or leisure time. So how we work is likely going to change, obviously, post-recovery as well. And OSH professionals, we all need to remain sort of savvy to the new tech that's available and out there, the different work methods, as I say, that are available to us. And you know, from a business perspective, we can rebuild and we can recover from COVID at an organizational level. But what about our people? You know, our people have been heavily affected. And I think obviously over the past few years, we've seen a shift towards health and well-being and mental health. I think post-pandemic, that will become even more apparent. You know, safety and the old style of, you know, making sure things are done and the checks are done and, you know, you've got your RAMs in place. That will all still happen, and it's still happening now. But the health and well-being aspect, I think, is bubbling under, and I suspect in the next 6-12 months we'll see sort of a longitudinal effect seep out. And I think as OSH professionals, we just need to be ready for that, but proactively put some good things in place. So there are a few of the competencies and skills sort of that I've picked up on. So I'll hand over to Jonathan to move on with the next speaker.
Jamie, what a great start. You know, thank you so much for that. So in our first foray there, we've heard about the importance of business skills, the personal performance planning, stakeholder management, and I'm sure that we'd all support the need for personal resilience. And it's actually great, Jamie, that we're hearing that you're having direct direct links into leadership through this very crucial time. So this is our moment. This is what's coming through already, and what I'd like to do now is move on to Liam Tiddy. So Liam is head of practice at Shirley Parsons. Liam has been with Shirley Parsons for 15 years, and in this time has gathered experience working across multiple sectors with, as you can imagine, numerous organisations. Liam heads up the executive search practice at Shirley Parsons, so his role is helping identify and appoint senior roles in terms of HSE, and he also leads the manufacturing team within the group. So we've got a great lot of experience with Liam today. I would urge you all to ask as many questions as you can and start formulating those for the end of the session. And it's great to see those coming through. So Liam is going to talk to us today about the recruiter's perspective, about what the market is currently looking like, current and future trends, and what steps people should take to remain marketable. So I'm sure, Liam, something we're all going to be really keen to hear about. So over to you.
Very much, Jonathan, and appreciate the invite. If you bear with me, I'll just share my screen. So yeah, thanks again for the invitation. I've been asked just to talk about, I suppose, how the pandemic's affected the health and safety community from a career development perspective over the past 6 months. So I'm going to talk to you about just a few observations from what we've learned over the past 6 months, a few tips, and then, of course, any questions I will try to answer towards the end. I will add the disclaimer now. Everything I'm going to say now is my opinion. It's not a magic answer, a magic recipe to getting a job or developing your career, but hopefully it'll give you food for thought in terms of progressing in the health and safety world. So what have we learned so far? Actually, it's not all negative. The HSE function across most businesses is needed more than ever. There's huge pressure on organisations to look after their people, look after their customers, and I'm sure a lot of you out there have felt the pressure on you to deliver and offer the right support in what is frankly a new experience for most of us, if not all of us. So it's a great time now to forward your career and further the HSE profession for everyone else as well. So there is a positive element to it. Unfortunately, purely from a recruitment perspective, the market is incredibly volatile. It is uncertain. Undoubtedly, there have been cutbacks across many organisations across multiple sectors, and we are seeing that and feeling that. So the ability to be adaptable and resilient is incredibly important. And when I talk about adaptability, it's, if you're working, for argument's sake, in the service sector, they're having a really tough time. But we do know that health and safety professionals have a transferable skill set. So it's worth just mulling over what you've done in those organisations that could be beneficial to construction, manufacturing, logistics in particular, where there is a greater need of support and certainly growth. On the other hand, you do need to be resilient. You're not going to get every job you apply for. In fact, you're not even going to get an interview for every job you apply for. So you do need to be able to roll with that and use that feedback sensibly to ensure that you do progress further forward. On the resilience front as well, adaptability, if you're in work, be aware of others around you, the pressures they're under, particularly senior managers and directors. Actually, most directors I've dealt with, both internally and externally, do care about their people, and they do want to keep people in jobs. So just be aware that they are under huge pressure at the moment, and you might not get everything you want, but if you work with them, you can make real progress during this period. And in terms of a new way of working, as you can see, I've commandeered my son's bedroom. In fact, he has the best desk in the house. So fortunately, he's now at school, but we're all adapting to what obviously we're all terming the new normal. So flexibility is incredibly crucial, but flexibility can be great. You can work slightly different hours. You can be aware of different setups people have, and actually you can use that to your benefit. So just a few observations I've come across over the past few months or so. As a health and safety environmental professional, what can you actually do to help further your career? Be that developing your own career if you're in a job, or looking for a new job, or actually out of work at the moment. One area which has changed dramatically is, as we're experiencing now, is video conferencing and video interviews. That is with us. That's not going away. Nearly in fact, every job I've worked on since the lockdown has started with a video interview. So it's worth practicing that style of interview. It is slightly different because you can't quite garner people's feedback in terms of body language, but it also can be really beneficial. In fact, that it's cheaper, it takes less time out of your day, and it's something as a health and safety professional you're going to have to do. You're going to have to engage and influence via video conference. So it's a skill that this time last year wasn't really on the radar, is now an absolute necessity. Other things you can do: keep up to date with latest trends and developments. So that includes obviously IOSH products, the HSE website itself, and also outside health and safety. Don't be insular. See what's going on, see what you can learn, try and understand where the businesses and industries are going, and use that to really develop your career as well. As the next point mentions, you have to develop your skill set outside HSE. When we are working with clients, the technical side is a given in terms of what they want from health and safety professionals. You should of course be able to demonstrate that, but more often than not, they want to understand how you influence and engage, and how you help a company develop. And as Jamie mentioned in the last presentation, you're there to, that company's there to deliver a particular service, be it manufacture a certain product or construct a certain building. Without that, we don't have any jobs. So actually think about the outcome of what you're trying to do. Of course, you want to look after people, but you can't stop production. You need to be there and work collaboratively. So what else can you offer? What other skills do you have? Most people in the health and safety world have had other careers. Tap into that and use it to your benefits. Innovation. We're all learning. This last 6 months has seemed long, but it's not really in the grand scheme of things. So use innovation. Try new ideas. They're not all going to work, but there could be some real groundbreaking initiatives out there which could make a real difference to your business and your own career. So get tech savvy. Virtual tours, drone footage, things that can actually can make a real difference to businesses will be incredibly important. So don't be shy. Bring those ideas to the table. And if anyone out there is looking to break into health and safety for their first job, it's pretty tough. I won't lie, it's always tough getting that first job in an industry. So don't overlook those indirect opportunities. So for argument's sake, it might be an operative role with a manufacturing company. But what you can do is maybe become a health and safety rep. There may be opportunities to develop internally. Most people I've dealt with over the past 15 years haven't started in health and safety. They've been given an opportunity and they've taken it internally. So be open to anything that comes across your desk, and look at not just at what it can bring to you here and now, but think about the future around that as well. And a few tips just to close out with, and this is from a recruiter perspective. Remember, apply for appropriate jobs. At the moment, I should add that we are getting lots of applications. For example, I was speaking to one of my colleagues this morning. He was working on a head of health and safety role, and he's got over 100 applications. It's almost impossible to get back to everyone personally. So it does help if you apply for the jobs which do seem right. Now, I do appreciate job adverts don't always tell the full story, but it's always worth following up with a personal email or even a phone call just to introduce yourself. Don't go for the scattergun approach. It just won't work. Partner with recruiters you trust. Don't go out to every man and his dog. It doesn't have to be us. It can be anyone out there you feel you're comfortable with. But work with them. Take time take time out to speak to them. And if the recruiter doesn't want to speak to you, then there's something wrong. Recruiters should want to take time out and understand not just your technical skills, but your motivations. We're there to to help guide your career, and also be just someone you can talk to. You know, it's difficult out there, and we've got a lot of experience, and we can certainly help guide you along the way. I mentioned in the previous slide, prepare for video interviews. So this is the new normal. So use recruiters, use your friends, family, whoever it may be, practice video interviews, get used to it. And use your experiences over the past 6 months. You know, don't underestimate what you've learned through this last trying period since March. It's you know, when you take time to reflect, I imagine there's lots of successes. It might seem tough at the time, it might still seem tough, but there'll be stuff out of the past few months which will make a huge difference for your career going forward. And despite what I've said about, you know, the new normal, actually the old rules still apply. It's just a slightly different medium. So companies and hiring managers and hiring directors want to see a strong mixture of technical and non-technical skills. In fact, the non-technical skills are probably more relevant now. They want to understand, again, how you influence, how you engage, how you deal with difficult situations, and think about particular examples you can bring to the table in terms of an interview process. And finally, I won't apologise for mentioning this again, be resilient. You know, there will be some tough times, there will be rejection. You know, take that on board, work with the people around you, and be active. You know, see what, you know, there's lots of opportunities out there to develop your own career. It might not be, the jobs market might be a little bit slow at the moment, but it's not without opportunity. And if anyone has any questions, you know, at all, there's my contact details. Feel free to get in touch with me, and apologies for the slightly alarming headshot of me there. And I'll pass you back to Jonathan. All good?
Liam, thank you very much. Do you know, I don't think it was that alarming a headshot, in all honesty. And also, I don't think you're the only person to be utilising your child's bedroom at this point in time, and them having the best desks in the house. So yeah, can definitely resonates with me, that one. So what we've heard from Liam there is again the call for personal resilience. Although demand is high, you know, flexibility, being technologically savvy, focusing on those non-technical skills and keeping up to date are really strong themes, and as well as some really useful hints and tips, whether you're looking to break into the profession or looking to move roles. I think, Liam, be prepared for an avalanche of questions, I think. So great, everybody, they're starting to come in, so that's great to see. So we now move on to our final presenter in the session, and it gives me it gives me great pleasure to welcome Sue Parker-Tantush, the Head of Health and Safety at the Co-op Group. And Sue has led the health and safety transformation at the Co-op. She's driven great change there. She's improved collaboration across the range of Co-op businesses, and really brought through a positive safety culture through her leadership. And with previous experience at Kingfisher Group, she's certainly had a global impact in the work she's done, and she prides herself on being a strategic leader with an understanding based on her experience in various roles beyond safety, including retail, risk management, audit and compliance. And on Sue's bio, I may say there's a wonderful sentence at the end, which I'd like to draw your attention to. Sue certainly hasn't noticed any drop in workload during lockdown, but has used the lack of a social life to sort out her overgrown garden at the weekend. So if you have no questions on IOSH competency, listeners, you please bring forward your questions on how to keep your garden tidy or prune your roses. So at that point, over to Sue.
Thank you. I'll try and share my screen. I think before I start, I'll touch a little bit on what Liam said, that, yeah, my background is really varied, and I can highly recommend, you know, having a varied background going into this profession, because it certainly gives you the advantage of having a really broad understanding of being commercial and understanding the challenges operators have got. So I would echo that, and I'm sure my presentation is going to echo many of the other presenters as well. So I think for me, health and safety now is about being, you know, it's about being strategic. This is absolutely key for me. I work for the Co-op now. It's a bit of a different organisation. I've never worked for anyone like the Co-op before. It is an organisation that works to serve the community, and profits are ploughed back into local communities across the UK. And we've certainly risen to the challenge and become a lifeline in some cases during the pandemic. So just to give you a little bit of background of where I'm working. What the difference that for me is as a safety professional is that I already have a place at the table in terms of talking to the board and the exec, because everything's about our colleagues and communities, and so safety is very important, very relevant. I haven't had to fight for that place. But if you have had to fight for that place before, you know, now you are at a significant advantage in that, you know, your voice is going to be heard. And this is where I want to talk about safety, leadership and strategy, because, you know, now we need to take the moment of that window, to take advantage of this window of opportunity. I like this definition of safety leadership from Dominic Cooper, the process of defining the desired state, setting up the team to succeed and engaging in the discretionary efforts that drive the safety value. So this is where being a strategic thinker and a decision maker with a clear vision comes into play. I think as safety professionals, we're naturally proactive in the sense of the technical risk assessments, for example. But I think I've found in our planning, and I've been guilty of this in the past, in our planning, we are still very reactive. We're reactive to the stats that we've had. We've had to massively react to this pandemic, and it has probably derailed a lot of our planning and processes. And I'm really keen now that as safety professionals that we start to look at how do we deal with the pandemic, but also maintain the business as usual. And that's where being strategic comes in. I think I have also been lucky enough to have an absolutely fantastic team. So don't just think about your own development. You need to think about the development of your team, because you will not be able to do this. And by development of your team, I mean, because you can't do it alone, I mean how good are they at collaboration, engagement, how do they bring people on side, how do they demonstrate that they're very commercial, because it's a given, it will be taken as a given that they are technical. And as Jonathan said, you know, technical is becoming the more minor aspect of it now. People look to us for the answers and to lead them, you know, they look for assurance and confidence, and you can't do this alone. And I think be keen that you're always learning, that you're resilient, and that you work in a very agile way. And I will talk about that in a little bit more detail. But planning is everything for me. So how do you plan for success? How do you be strategic? This is how you demonstrate to your board and the exec that you are capable of leading them out of the pandemic, but also leading them into a strong safety culture. I did know somebody who presented a predecessor of mine in another organisation, neither of which have been named, who stood in front of the board and the exec talking about you know, blocked fire exits. The board don't want to know about blocked fire exits. The exec needs confidence that you have a strong plan and a structure. I started in the Co-op with created a governance structure, and that's within a very strong risk management framework. And this is where your leadership skills come into play. I've set minimum standards, and all of that planning means that you are able to be reactive because you have a plan in place. You've got to build in strategies and timelines so that you can be flexible. Yes, the pandemic has derailed a lot of normal activity, but other health and safety risks are still out there. The risks that we were dealing with before as safety professionals haven't gone away. And that's why forward thinking and having a strong vision will support our activity going forward. Because if we face a really strong second wave, if the law changes, and it changes about every 5 minutes, I think at the moment in the UK, it used to be quite boring health and safety law, but now it changes every day. If the law changes and you need to react to it, it's not going to derail all of your activity. So I think that's absolutely key, that we try and maintain a business as usual. And build on well-being strategies as well, build those into your plan. I attended so many conferences, etc., in the last couple of years where well-being was talked about all the time. And the safety professionals were not necessarily trained to do that. However, now, who would have imagined that it would have to be an absolutely essential part of what we do, building well-being into your strategy, set those minimum standards for well-being as well across your organisation, challenge your operational colleagues to see what they're doing and to ensure that they are looking out for the general occupational health of colleagues, but also that, their mental well-being, what strategies are in place for that area of health and safety as well now. And then, board need, as I said, alluded to earlier, the board need the so what. So I do find that if you provide that top level plan and strategy to an executive board, they get one comfort that you know what needs to be done. They know what their challenge is, but also they do tend to let you get on with your job, which is always a positive. And they do take you seriously if you shout really loudly and something really is serious, then they understand that, yes, actually, on this occasion, we need to take note. So it's dealing with the high level, picking the thing that they know is going to keep them awake at night, getting them on board, but above all, demonstrating that you're a very strong leader. And above all, everything you do needs to be in collaboration with your operators across the business. Leadership in health and safety is absolutely vital now. Technical skills won't demonstrate that you are commercially aware of some of the impact of your decisions, and technical skills won't necessarily support you working alongside your operating colleagues to make sure something's embedded. And then finally, this has been touched upon by both previous speakers, but look at your personal resilience now. This is a quote from one of our senior leaders. Physical and online presenteeism is a thing of the past. Focus on the great things we can do together. I've had to really look at how I manage my day to day. I'm working at home now. I'm always on. How do I end the day? Do I close the laptop? One of my team puts her laptop in a cupboard so she can't see it. One of my team came back from maternity leave recently and walked straight into this whole new way of working. And she said what she really noticed is that Friday working at home day, because every other day was in the office, she's lost it. We don't need to try and book a meeting room, which is always a bit of a challenge in the co-op, because every day we're available, we're always online. Build your working at home day back in, build that time out, block out bits of focus time so you can think. Be open and honest with your team, ask them how they are and look out for them. But, if they ask you how you are, be honest and open and answer to them, and support genuine flexibility with your team. Don't just talk about it, actually put it into practice, demonstrate it, that flexible working does mean just do what you need to do, but when you need to do it. And then I think finally, I would recommend moving. Book some time out and move from your desk. Don't just sit there all day. It's really easy to do so. And look after yourself physically as well as mentally, so that you are prepared to rise to this challenge. It's a challenge, but above all, my message is demonstrate resilience to your team, look after yourself, but above all, keep thinking ahead and forward planning. And I think that is one of the key indicators of really good leadership. Finally, on the slide, I've just got a couple of resources which I found helpful, which can be shared with you as well. So I know that the IOSH new blueprint is very good, very focused on those softer skills. I'm working through the approved behavioural safety course from IOSH. I find that very good. And look at your own leadership programmes and other great charities like Mind. Thank you, Jonathan.
Sue, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. And again, I think a really insightful perspective, almost seeing it from the board's perspective, I think through that, and the importance of the profession, providing that assurance to the exec there, and the need to focus on strategy and significance, and focused on forward thinking. And again, that point around resilience and being flexible. So yes, some themes coming through. So look, we've got some great questions that are now with us. So if I can ask the panelists to show themselves again, and we can start to work through some of the questions. Welcome back all. So we'll start with a nice gentle introduction, but I have to say there's a bit of a sting in the tail to this one. So so first part's a nice introduction, and then there's something quite controversial is going to be asked. So first one, Jamie's outlined some skills that we need. Are there any other specific skills that you would highlight at this point? And then the second point, or the second question here is, maybe these business skills are only required for the manager, but are they really required for the officer or for some of the introductory roles, or even the inspectorate? So maybe there is a view from the panel on that. So Jamie, as the question was raised, your name was mentioned, you should have right to reply first of all, I think. So what are the skills that are needed?
Dare I say all of them? We'll touch on all of them at some point, whether that be in COVID times or general day-to-day. We will touch on every single aspect of, let's say, the IOSH competency wheel, or the skill sets that we're all well aware of. In terms of the second point, the difference between maybe a manager and a leader versus a shop floor safety advisor or inspector, whatever your title may be. Again, I'd share a similar view. Whilst you might not need to run with a particular skill set or have it, in your back pocket ready to go, you need to be aware of it. A lot of people may question, well, I don't need to know about budgeting or the impacts on finance, for example. True, but you might need it in 6 months, or you might want to have it in, as I say, as a bit of a consideration when you're thinking about your strategy or your training budget. So I think we need to be aware of all of the competencies and all of the skill sets, irrespective of grade, role, whatever position you hold in a business. But no, I would say you don't necessarily need to have them all, to hand and be able to, demonstrate them off the bat. Obviously, certain roles will need them more so than others, but that's not to say forget about them. We all still need them, as I say, in the back pocket, just in case.
Great, thank you, Jamie. I could see Sue there nodding. Yeah. So, what's your take on it, Sue?
Yeah, I agree with everything Jamie said, and I particularly liked his point about stakeholder management in his presentation. To me, I think at every level as a health and safety professional, you need that, because I think the old days of it's not very inclusive, but it was guys, let's be honest, in a clipboard, with a clipboard and a hard hat and safety boots and a fleece, coming up, and everyone thinking, oh God, no, here we go. What have we done wrong? What have we said wrong? That is not how we make things happen. So I think, now it's about being an equal leader. I mean, in the co-op, I'm part of the risk leadership team. I'm not there's a risk leadership team, and then there's the safety professional on the side. And I think if you start off with that, with good stakeholder management and build on those skills, I think that's how you'll really progress in your health and safety career.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Liam, is there anything you would wish to add to that?
Only really to echo what Sue and Jamie said. Those skill sets are required in some capacity at any given time. And if we're in the HSE profession, you have to influence in some capacity. Whether you're a coordinator, a trainee, or a director, it's just using those skills at slightly different levels. So absolutely, and that you need those skills in some capacity. And even if you don't know it inside out, that's not necessarily a problem. But what it will allow you to do is show some empathy for other people and their jobs. So yeah, absolutely, you do need those.
Yeah, thank you. If I may say, there's lots of comments coming in just thanking you all for your contribution. So let's keep it going. So we've talked about agility in respect of our work setup, how our people work, but as OSH professionals, we need to also demonstrate agility in our decision making. What advice can the panel offer to professionals to demonstrate that agile thinking that, in fairness, you've all talked about in their approach to to support the business? So how do we demonstrate agility? Sue, perhaps you could start us off with that one.
Oh, that's a tough one, isn't it? You can start with someone else if you want. I think, how do we demonstrate agility? I think we have actually over the last 6 months or so, in that we have had to cut through the treacle we would have applied before to react to situation and think on our feet. And I think our horizon scanning has become very agile, as I said, alluded to before. Guidance and legislation changes constantly. And I think in the past we might well have reached for, writing a new policy or a procedure. But, we haven't got time to do that in something like this. And what we've learned is that it's really taught us to cut through some of the slack and the paperwork and work more quickly. We're going to maintain a lot of the things we've learned, sharper on the shop floor inductions, sharper training for colleagues that's quicker, but they're going to retain the message more effectively. So I think it's learning to do things in a more simple way and more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jamie, is there anything you would add to that?
I think Sue's pretty much nailed it on the head. I mean, I've never used one of these as much in the past few months just to speak with colleagues than I have ever. Just being able to pick up the phone. It sounds so simple from working in an agile kind of method and perspective, but just, instead of, like Sue says, reaching for the procedural guides or rewriting something or sending the email, I've been picking up the phone, just have a chat. Can we do it? Can we do it a different way? I'd also just say, I try and avoid saying the word no. Now, I know everyone goes on about safety and IOSH being an enabler. Certainly, if we want to be more agile, try and avoid using the word no as much as we possibly can. It's a bit of a challenge for everyone, that, but yeah.
Amy, what word would you use?
I'll think about it and I'll get back to you. That's not an answer to you, but don't ever say no off the bat. There's always something we can do. There's always a way of doing something, whether it be safely or in a healthier way. But I don't like just saying no, we can't do it because, there's always another way. Yeah,
wise words. Liam, one specifically for you here is it okay to follow up with recruiters, and if so, how often would you consider often enough, or too often?
Well, I'll start by saying every recruiter is slightly different. So there, some like a phone call every day, but most don't. It's when I'm going to throw it back. Is when it feels appropriate. When you're on a call with a recruiter and you're talking about a particular job and they don't mention about the timeframes, ask the question what's appropriate for them. Generally, every couple of weeks is okay, but it depends on the nature of your discussion. So if you're actually in the process, you should really be given an element of timeframes. Those timeframes do change. Bear in mind that it's not always the recruiter's decision; it's at the client's behest. But they should then be following back with you as someone who's looking at the job, to give them the right information. If it's just a general catch-up, once a month, once every couple of months is fine. But just agree, from the outset, just ask the question. Don't be shy. And bear in mind that recruiters, if they don't know already, we don't make any money if we don't make any placements. So it's the lifeblood of our profession. We need to find good candidates. And we want to work with people. And that's enjoyment. It's great helping people out. So I didn't really answer the question, did I?
No, I think you did. And if the person that's asked that question would like any follow up, please get back in contact. But thank you, Liam. So there's a few questions around the changing nature of the agenda, and one that seems to sum it up really nicely is that with the arrival of 45,003 next year, do we see there's going to be a shift into more the psychosocial aspects? And do you see that investigators and inspectors will be focusing on that area more? So this emergence of psychosocial. So is there any sense of that you're seeing, and maybe Sue, Jamie, in your roles?
Certainly we're starting to, we've led a lot on well-being throughout this for the co-op, but we have a well-being team. And they have really looked at mental health as a huge issue now and how that plays into the workplace. And what we did realise in this is that, you know, this is where we've got to learn. We're going to work much more closely together now, because they have been separate strands. So we've got experts in that who sit in HR, and then there's ourselves. So certainly that's definitely a big focus for us next year. It really is. It really is. And it's something that, you know, in the past was never really thought about.
Thank you. So both you and Jamie were fighting to get to the mic first on that one. So, Jamie, is there anything you would wish to add?
Sue said it all. Sue said it all.
Sue said it all.
I would agree. I would tend to agree. I think I touched on it in my presentation, didn't I? That, you know, I think that the psychological aspects, certainly of COVID, will start to take the toll if they haven't already on a lot of people, and I think we'll only see that longer term. So yeah, I think the introduction of the new standard, I think, should be on all organisations' minds, even if they're not going to run with it, just to have a look at it to see what things they could be doing, because as I say, it's a big piece. It's a big piece, and I think we all probably underestimate just how big a shift there's going to be in terms of psychological well-being amongst the colleagues and workplaces that we're working in.
Yeah, and it certainly feels that COVID has accelerated that, doesn't it? So Liam, just to, you know, make you feel good, there's a comment coming here that Liam touches on an important point: empathy, and it feels like this is a key and emerging leadership quality that is key to delivering effective teams and stakeholder engagement. So that's definitely struck a chord with the audience, Liam. So a question for you, and it's quite a pointed one, and I like this, is the age of the paper CV over? If you received a video CV initial contact, would that impress or detract?
It's a personal choice, really. I wouldn't say the day of the personal CV, the paper CV is still with us. We still like to see a potted history of sorts, of what, you know, how someone's developed into their career. What has changed, and this isn't new, if you're putting down your, I suppose, almost a job description in your CV, that's a waste of time. Put down your achievements, put down your purpose, what have you done? And then the point of a CV really is for someone to want to know more. It's not an exhaustive list of every job you've done and every achievement you had. It's like, okay, I'm interested in this individual, let's speak with them. But on the other hand, we've got different avenues. So yeah, video CVs, obviously LinkedIn, you know, it does add value. There'll be loads of routes forward for people, and yeah, we've done a few, you know, interviews with candidates and used that. So it depends on what's comfortable with yourself, and to be honest, what the client wants as well. But yeah, I still think the CV is going to be also for a little bit longer.
Yeah, so let's not get rid of it just yet, I think. Sounds like is the guidance to that. Great question, thank you. So Liam, this also picks on something that you touched on in your presentation, is about kind of people wanting to break into the profession, and you mentioned it's quite tough to do that. So in response to that, we've had a question in that, do you find in your experience that businesses are currently allowing work experience placements or shadowing opportunities, or is it just because of COVID the doors are having to be closed to prevent potential exposure? So maybe Liam and then Sue and Jamie may have a view on that.
Yeah, work experience is a lot tougher than people realise. You might be doing it voluntarily, but there is a cost attributed to it. So it's a cost of someone's time for you to, you know, who will shadow you. So it takes time out of their day, which costs money, effectively. There are other insurance purposes, elements to it as well. So it's not free labour, and not all companies are that keen on it because of that. It just takes up a lot of time. So it's quite tough to get work experience anyway. What I would suggest, and there's a bit of a further plug for IOSH, is go to your IOSH meetings. I know they're all virtual now, but you've got such a network there. There will be people who will mentor you, and you might get opportunities, probably with smaller companies, to be honest, who are, to coin the phrase, are a bit more agile, as you mentioned earlier. So to be honest, Jamie and Sue probably have a view on it. I suspect they've been asked over the years if they can give people work experience, but it's not as easy as people believe it can be.
Yes, Sue, any reflections?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, pre-pandemic, I would often get approached by people in the co-op, in other roles and outside of the co-op, and we would bring them into Angel Square in Manchester, and they would spend a day with the teams, and they would understand what we did and our role, and it's really more of an insight into what we do. I think it's really challenging now to get on the ground because, you know, our big focus at the moment, if we're honest, is protecting customers and colleagues, and to then present that additional risk is quite a challenge. So I think in the short term, I would echo Liam's advice. Attend IOSH meetings. I think I found it much easier now. Everything's online because it was quite challenging before to get to them, and they've been. I think they've just got better and better. And so, you know, your regional meetings, and then also I think and reach out to all the safety professionals. You know, we're really busy, but you know, people like me, we're desperate to get young people into this arena. We need, you know, I'm a bit longer in the tooth now, and we want young professionals coming through. You know, I offered to go to my daughter's school once, and they talked about careers. I go, "Are you serious?" You know, and I'm not talking about safety. You know, that was too embarrassing. But we don't want that image anymore. We want people to come in. So I think, yeah, I'd absolutely echo Liam's answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sue. If I may say, Jamie and Sue, it's a comment here which will make your heart sing. That thanks for your uncommonly practical approaches in your answers and your presentation. So that's great. So let's just one final question. I mean, we've got so many, in all honesty, but one final question. So we've talked about new people coming into the profession, but actually we've had a few questions about people making the leadership link from management to leadership. And actually, what's the differentiator in terms of competence requirements as you move from management to leadership? So where should we start? Liam, did you have this is your area, you know, recruiting for these senior roles. What's your take on what the difference is?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. It's quite a tricky one as well, actually, to articulate a good answer. But the one of the key, and there's many differences. In the management role, you are generally operational. So you'll be looking at the day-to-day, week-to-week in terms of driving performance. When you become into a more formal leadership role, be that head of safety, director of safety, whatever it may be, there is much more of a strategic mindset. And when I say strategic, you're looking at very much long-term processes and deliverables. So it's not just about next month's targets, it's about next year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. And you have to really think differently and offer real value to an organization. Say that this is where we want to get to, but I need your buy-in. So then you have to really engage the board of directors or the other operational directors. They have to you have to get buy-in at that level while still maintaining a strong link to the shop floor or whatever it may be in terms of your particular industry. So you have to become more rounded, and I'd suggest slightly more detached from what were your peers. And that's why it's difficult for a lot of people to move from maybe a manager role into a head of safety role in the same company, because you are viewed in a certain light, rightly or wrongly. That progression is difficult. But if you move from one company to another, you're new, so they haven't got any preconception of who you are. So they're the key differences. But I'm sure there are many others, and actually there might be a counter kind of argument to what I said anyway as well. But hopefully that kind of gives a little bit of light on certainly my thought process on it.
Liam, that's really useful. Unfortunately, we don't have time to get into an argument about it. You know, maybe that's our next webinar theme there. Listen, we've got 30 seconds left. Jamie, what's in a word? What's the difference between manager and director in this?
Stress levels. No. I think Liam touches on some good points there. I say, in terms of wrapping it up, I think it's a case of, moving from that shop floor type position to a strategic type position. So instead of being the one trying to potentially run with a strategy and, deliver against it, you are potentially the deviser of said strategy. You are trying to, put it in play. You are putting it in place. You're implementing it. So yeah, at times, there's not actually that big a difference. You'll find that I think leaders and managers tend to step back a little bit more from the technical aspects and think bigger picture and business. But yeah, I think Liam pretty much summarised it pretty well.
Well done, Liam. Thank you, Jamie. Sue, final word from you. What's the difference in a few sentences, please?
People skills, being able to lead and manage a team, grow a team, and enable them to take the credit for everything that they're doing on behalf of a strategy you may have written, but that they've actually done all the work for. So I think absolutely a good leader leads people.
And that feels like a perfect note to end this webinar on. So thank you, Sue. Listen, if you're sat at your child's desk at home, or whatever desk you sat at, if I'm sure you'd put your hands together and say a big round of applause for our panel today. So thank you, Sue. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Liam. That was absolutely fantastic. Listen, just a few. You're welcome. I mean, a few final points. If you haven't already done so, please go to the COVID resource page on the IOSH website. Lots of free resources there, from guidance, templates, even e-learning modules on there that you can peruse and use at your leisure, both for you and for your employees and staff. And finally, IOSH has recently launched, very recently actually, launched an e-learning version of its qualification, the Level 3 Safety and Health for Business qualification. And why that's important, why that is relevant for the discussion we've had, is that qualification equips you with not just the technical knowledge, but the much needed and rounded business skills that every one of the panelists has taught to you today. How to write a business case, how to deliver a presentation, how to understand the requirement of the board. So if they're the things that are interesting to you and you want to kind of like move up that ladder and have the impact and influence, that might be the qualification you're looking for. So let's draw it to a close. Thank you again, panelists. Absolute pleasure. Have a good rest of your day, evening or morning. Goodbye.